thank you all for coming to my talk. This is just too cool. I just have to say I love this conference, love Develop Denver. I love the development community in Denver. This is just awesome to be part of this. It's my first time speaking at this conference, and I'm just really excited to be part of Develop Denver in the future. Love it. So thank you all. Thank you all so much for coming. Welcome to prototyping in a post-MVP world. I believe that MVPs have failed too many people. They're just bad. And it's probably because they're misunderstood. They're probably not entirely bad, but that doesn't really make it any better. They're really difficult and hard to understand, and so I think that we are ready to move into the post-MVP world where we can build good software and good prototyping without sort of focusing and kind of being infatuated by MVPs. So, a little bit about me. I grew up in Uzbekistan, in Central Asia. I moved back to Boston, the US when I was in high school. I studied physics in college. I quit my manufacturing job fairly quickly after getting it and tried to start a solar tech company, which failed. I blamed that on hardware and moved into software immediately. And I think I could probably safely say that it was more to do with having a really bad MVP process in order to get there. And so, yeah, it's now, I'll just talk later. I work at Cloud Elements as a product manager. And yeah, previously developer, that kind of thing as well. So, yeah, here's the mandatory Marty Kagan quote for all products talks. But in reality, I as my kind of transition from developer to product manager happened, I asked a lot of people for recommendations. I love this book. This is a fantastic book. I'm sure most of you guys are huge fans as well. When I read this, I was like, are you crazy? 10 to 20 ideas a week. I think in the startup that I attempted to start, in the course of about 15 months, I can probably say we tested about 8 variations of product ideas, really just focused on one sort of MVP the whole time. And so, yeah, when I read this, I was kind of like, it's a bit extreme. I don't know if I can handle that, but I do aspire to it. I do think that it's something that we can get to. And I'm proud to say that at Cloud Elements today, we're definitely prototyping in a much better and more quickly rate than we were, than I was in my previous startup. But it's still, yeah, I think I'm going to focus on talking about prototypes, which is a little bit different than maybe product experiments that Marty Kagan talks about. So we'll take a little bit of the extreme step back and say, okay, can we do a more kind of pace that makes sense for other people? So today we'll be talking about how to avoid bad MVPs, identify valuable prototypes for your team, and then reduce the work necessary to get those prototypes out the door and get real value from them. So not reducing the value, but reducing the actual work it takes to get there. So I believe prototyping is for everyone. So this is obviously kind of a product-facing talk. I'm sure we have a lot of product managers here. Anyone who's a PM, raise their hand and identify themselves. Okay, cool. But I do think that prototyping is a part of everyone in a software team's life. If you're an engineer and you're not directly working with a product manager who's focused on sort of helping identify prototypes, then you're essentially kind of your own PM for that regard, and you should think about how to prototype in an effective way to do that. And then if you're a freelancer or you provide a service of some kind, you might be the product, so therefore you should probably prototype yourself and your services as well. But for today's talk, again, we're going to kind of focus on people building new things. This can be within an established company, building new products and features, or it can be an entirely new company, or just trying to do something new in your life or with your service or your freelancing gig or whatever it is. So that's where we're kind of focused today. An alternate title I had for this talk, which I was convinced to not go with, is this, and I recognize that I think that I performed a bad MVP with a team previously, but I really think this is kind of a true statement because it's a hard concept to grasp and an even harder concept to actually execute on. And so I'll just step back for a second for the two of you who don't know what MVPs are. Maybe there's more of you, but MVPs, I'm sure we all hear them all the time. They were not invented by this man Eric Ries in this book. However, they were kind of popularized by that book. Again, I love this book. This is a great book to read, but it is, this definition of a minimum viable product is difficult to handle because the idea that this statement, the minimum set of features needed for learning for visionary early adopters, just like to break that down for me, for my view, breaking that down, it might be because I'm a physics and math person, but the theoretical minimum is always negative infinity, so I'm already like, okay, I don't know how to quite get there. A set of features is like, that's what a product is. So if I don't have a defined idea what my product is, how am I defining my set of features right off the bat? I mean, you can do this, but it's complicated and it's difficult. And then, what am I learning? Do I even know what I'm learning yet? I really need to figure that out, obviously. But if I'm already kind of like setting up a set of features before that, there's a lot of things that tie together. And then the last part of this is maybe the hardest part for me. What are visionary early adopters? Is this sort of just a persona you read about in a marketing report, about these people are going to flock to this thing even though it only has minimum functionality? I don't think so. Like, are those actually, maybe just friends you have who you talked about this and they're like, yeah, I'm on board. Does that make them visionary? What if I don't think my friends are visionary? Like, I don't know. This becomes just a really hard thing across the board to sort of understand every part of it and to define one and then to execute on it again. This gets really hard. So this is kind of from my personal struggle, where at this company we were trying to build useful personal solar-powered products for consumers. Our first idea was a solar-powered wristband that you could wear on like a watch, could charge your phone when your phone died. Seemed like a great idea. I can probably see a lot of you guys being like, yeah, that's a horrible idea. I get it, it was a horrible idea. But this was we went through a lot of kind of functional prototypes trying to figure out how to get that kind of high efficiency solar cells in small flexible devices, make them work together. That was great for prototyping in terms of can we even do this thing. But this was, we went through several iterations of this as well as iterations of kind of branding and social campaigns and surveys to kind of figure out who would be buying this and why, and all that stuff. And that's all because these were iterations of a single MVP we had in our mind. Eventually, when we got here 15 months later, this was it. This was what we had in our mind. Like, we built the MVP that seemed like it made sense to us. We could not envision putting in front of these mystical visionary adopters a product that was less dynamic than this. And so even though this is minimal functionality in terms of just like battery, solar powers, charges your phone. Not a lot of features, but getting here took all of our money, all of our time, and eventually we went out of business, obviously. So it was a great thing to learn about, but this was really just, we could never get past this phase. And that I think is because we were just so tied to the idea of an MVP. So I much prefer this idea of a prototype, because especially this definition of a prototype I really like. It doesn't have to be a real product. It needs to appear real, and it can appear real to specific people. That's very helpful for me. So when I think back on our MVP in that period, it basically was a prototype because it was not real. We had real functionality, we had real designs and real mocks of how this would work when we manufactured it, but it was not a real product, and therefore it was a prototype, but we way overdid that prototype. I mean, we way too far on the prototype scale. Like, that was, in trying to get to that MVP, we could have built a much more simple prototype to answer the questions we were looking for, and the idea of the MVP as a big, beautiful thing just made that really difficult for us. So I really believe that deciding what a minimal set of features is without prototyping first is absolutely crazy. And focusing on something that's coming next, what your next prototype is, that doesn't have to appeal to early adopters, to visionaries, to whoever. It doesn't have to represent your brand. It can appeal to Bob, who sits across from you. It can appeal to your accounting department, who exhibits some of the traits of these users. It can, there's real people you can identify, communicate with, and put a prototype in front of them that represents functionality that appears real to those people and learn from those people. So this can get you your next milestone and can get you on your way to an MVP that sort of happens more naturally than trying to focus on how to create that first. But let's talk about what a good example of an MVP does look like when you do it well, and how possibly we can prototype better here. So I'm sure many of you have heard about a small company called Twitter, and their first version. It's kind of a famous MVP story, right? Because they built this in a weekend. It was real functionality. People started using it right off the bat, and it grew rapidly because it had that social network effect, right? And so they were like, MVPs are amazing. You just like throw a crazy ugly logo on a website, and then like people love it. And this was a great prototype because it captured that functionality of, does real-time, short social updates provide value to people? That's great. Like, and they answered that question, and it was, yes, it does. Let's build a product around this. And that's terrific. But this kind of, if we think about that sort of functionality, this is kind of a functional prototype in that way, and they probably could have phased it back even earlier to identify specifically that functionality and how to react to it. And so this is technically an MVP, but I think it kind of represents a prototype. And I think what can we do that, like, if let's just say this was a technically hard problem to solve to build this thing, or they had a big brand that they had to defend and they couldn't just have whoever made this in word art do this before they posted it online. Things like everything over here on your right, user sign-ins and sign-ups. Was that necessary? I think they probably could have just hard-coded 20 of their friends' email addresses into a database and then told them, hey, here you go. Like, you just show up and it's going to work for you. And in fact, they could have probably just posted a list of things that their friends had texted them recently and just sent it to their same group and been like, hey, what do you think? And that also could have been a prototype that would have gotten them right off the bat being like, oh, I want this and I want it to work more. Can you please make it work more for me? So that's my argument for this is an MVP because they could just put it out there as a product that people could use if that wasn't a great product. I think they could have put out even the same functionality in the version of a prototype that would appeal to the same kinds of people, and they could have done the same learning in possibly less time, although they were obviously very quick with how they did it. So let's talk a little bit more about what makes those valuable prototypes, how to identify them, and then how to reduce the work to get them done. Reduce them at all. So this is another prototype that I actually do think is a great prototype. And maybe many of you already recognize what product this is a prototype for. But I had an investor, could you please be an investor? But he was an investor, not an investor in our company, tell me very, very firmly that we needed to take a book out of their book, or a page out of their book, to copy the people who were building the Google Glass product, because they had this great prototyping strategy. And I will take it to my grave, but that was horrible advice because it resulted in a horrible product, so why would I want to do that? But this is a brilliant functionality project because we're able to put functionality in front of people to say, is it valuable for you to see real-time information, a screen that you're used to seeing on your computer right in front of your face, and get information like that in real time? And people were like, yeah, this is awesome. And that's terrific. They were able to answer that question. But then they were like, awesome, let's do this. How do we get that functionality to those people? And so they jumped ahead to an MVP, which all they did not realize missed the main question, which was, does what appears to be real here is that I'm wearing a ugly fucking thing on my face, and I don't want that. And they totally blew by that prototype because that functionality was great. What they could have identified is that, well, people like this screen in front of their face. Maybe they just want bigger smartphones they can stare at while they're walking across the sidewalk, or maybe they want something like an Apple Watch. Whatever the case, like that functionality and experience exists outside of this MVP, but they were so focused on shipping this MVP. And they put it in beta, the early adopters signed up, the early adopters loved it, like this guy, and we all know the rest, right? So, so this again is something that I think we can do better. Good prototypes are not shitty versions of your product. Good prototypes are good symbols of specific features and functionality. They appear real, even though they're maybe not. So, moving forward to a more recent example in my own life, I currently work for Cloud Elements. We are a developer platform for API integrations. Us nerds like to call it one API to rule them all. There's a lot of other things mixed in there, but this is kind of a cool way to think about it. But earlier in the year, we had a lot of kind of things change on us all at once in terms of large valuable customers starting to try to deploy this sort of functionality to more, to less technical users, more business analysts trying to solve enterprise problems with our mostly developer-facing tool, as well as just kind of the marketplace changing in that people and products that we thought competed more in the Zapier space started pitching themselves as, we can do this stuff too, the complicated stuff. We can kind of get in there, and we can also make things available via API and all this other stuff like that. And so all of a sudden we were sort of thinking, okay, do we, there's a lot of questions to answer all of a sudden. But our leadership, decided that we did need to do something about it. We needed to try to answer how much of a business analyst user do we need to be able to support to keep our enterprise customers and keep growing in the enterprise space and keep that opportunity alive. So all of a sudden, my team was tasked with these requests, which felt more requirements from all kinds of stakeholders, and all kinds of use cases came our way. And essentially, we were given a very short time frame to try to produce a new product for a new user that created a new experience that could essentially consume the very technical capabilities of our platform for other ways. So we were sort of like, okay, sure, yeah, that makes sense. But this was a great project because it's really, I think, embodied, this was an ability for our team as product engineers to figure out a way to make this, to make our solution more applicable to other people. So we had to very quickly get focused on these next milestones. These milestones are coming up quickly. And the first ones were simply, meetings with large customers and large sort of partners to talk about what we were going to do about this and how we're going to answer these problems. And so very quickly we started iterating on visual prototypes, wires, mock-ups, all that sort of thing, which was very helpful. And simultaneously, we had our engineering team doing a deep dive into can we functionally build a product that composes all this API functionality into a single stream of workflow process that won't necessarily cost us an arm and a leg or totally run our platform into the ground, right? And so there were a lot of sort of risks being addressed early on, but we didn't really get to sort of a full functioning prototype right off the bat. So the time is ticking, and we're sort of like, okay, we're meeting these milestones in terms of, okay, now we can do it. These people are interested, they like how we're approaching it. We're going to answer these questions one at a time. But all of a sudden we got to a point where there's not a lot of time left. And how we decided to do was kind of sit down and think about it as, okay, what if our team working on this product was a startup? We have 3 weeks before a huge pitch, and if it doesn't go well, we might be out of business. There is a very good possibility that this is just not a good fit for us, and we're going to just cancel this endeavor. So what do we do to get there? And so we had plenty of stakeholders telling us exactly what our MVP should look like, exactly the kind of functionality that it should have, and how it would address certain problems, and all that kind of stuff. And of course, the feature creep and the personas that were involved were just, just way too much for us to handle. So we started thinking about this in terms of, okay, what would we show? And some of our first ideas were like, well, we've got this functional prototype that kind of shows that we can do this. So what if we just put a nicer API wrapper around it? We sort of, upload or post a body that represents a workflow, and then we execute it. We're able to show results and show people that we can do this. Well, sounds good mostly. It's helpful, but it's not. The biggest question we had for people was, how can you make your tool less developer friendly? So not great. What if we focused on the visuals? We really polished our mockups, made kind of beautiful Envision apps, and they felt really dynamic and everything. Well, that works most of the time, but we have like really different domain-specific customers. So, if we do it one way, we go to one pitch, and we do another pitch 2 days later, talk to them, they're going to be like, I don't really get it. It's not our space, not our problem. And so what we landed on was this. A workflow visualizer. So although we had the ability to execute workflows from our APIs, and we had a lot of mocks of what this could look like, we spun up very quickly, and this is a huge appreciation of my engineers who worked on this. They just absolutely crushed it. But we put together what looked like a dynamic workflow editing tool, but in reality was just a generated view of those options. Users could click into steps and look at the different settings that these things have, explore what that functionality looks like, but not change anything, right? So there's no functionality in terms of editing it, changing it, making things their own. But we could, on the back end, spin up custom workflows really quickly, upload them to the DB, and show someone around the spot. Hey, look, here's something that fits your use case, that fits your space, you understand it, what do you think about it, we get really good feedback right off the bat, and all that kind of stuff. So this, I felt like, was a really great success of our team early on. We were able to identify this level of prototype that was achievable in a very short amount of time, but still got good feedback. It appeared real, but it was missing a lot of the key functionality an MVP would have had to have. But I actually think we still probably could have reduced more work out of this prototype in retrospect. And so one of the first ones that comes to mind really is we were very focused on making this a good visual representation, right, and a tool that people were going to see as useful for non-developers. So we had this animation of expanding the steps, from collapsed to show you all the settings and that kind of stuff. And it looks great in the demo. It's excellent. But did we really need that to totally communicate the value of this functionality to users? Maybe not. The other big one, you can see in the top right here, you could run this workflow. If we uploaded the right kind of workflow, you could run it and see results there. That was really valuable, and I think that was a good step to, and we already had the functional prototype anyway, so it just made sense. But did we have to do that to get the same amount of feedback at that stage? Maybe not. Maybe we could have then focused on, just addressing some other problems better as well. So this is where we're going to be a little more interactive. I don't know if you guys all read the description of the talk thoroughly, but we're going to ask for a volunteer at the end of this. I'm going to say it's the very beginning of the talk, so you have less time to think about it now. But if you have a product idea that you would like us to workshop prototype ideas for together, then think about it. This is your opportunity to get some live feedback. But first of all, I'm going to give the floor to you guys and also ask for feedback on our prototype. In addition to those two things, what else could we have cut out of here to make this prototype answer questions about what we're looking for even sooner? Any thoughts or ideas? Yeah.
So the solar power or solar battery charger that's wrist mounted you were talking about.
Yeah.
Is that something that's just period limited by the technology? Would a simpler prototype have ever led to a successful product if the technology isn't there?
Good question. I think the technology's gotten better. It could definitely be a more effective product today. However, one of the big things we saw happen at the same time was smartphones got bigger and they have bigger batteries. People don't have as much battery dying problems throughout the day as they used to. So I don't know. Any more feedback on this product and this prototype and how we could possibly make an earlier version of this prototype? Cool, awesome. It was a smash hit. Yeah.
Just list the steps.
Right.
Rather than having
Yeah. So the suggestion was, could we just have listed steps? Why do we need these lines connecting things together and all that? And we did. You're right. We spent a lot of time thinking about this, probably more than we needed to. But at the end, we really decided that we were trying to go for something so visual, trying to kind of overcompensate for our current platform to go into a whole other space where can make it so visual people can tell us why this is actually not effective and how we can kind of tone it back and maybe find a sweet spot. That was kind of how we started thinking about trying to lay out the whole thing in a very visual, sort of read it left to right kind of thing. But we did have questions really early on in terms of, even as we were building this, we were thinking, people are going to hate it, and they're going to want to go vertically. Because horizontal scrolling sucks, and also just everything goes vertically in the web, so why would we do that? And then we got to start testing it, and people were like, actually it's really helpful, because when I kind of pull up these different steps side by side, they fill the screen, I can kind of compare things. Also, I read left to right, so with the kind of, the verbiage on these different parts of the workflow, it's like a sentence, I read left to right. And so yeah, we learned a lot of things because of how it was, but yes, I think we could have learned a lot of that even if we had gotten a prototype out before the canvas area was all done and just made a list of steps and been like, if it's going to happen, you can make it happen. And then got feedback there, we probably could have got that back too. Any other thoughts? That was a good one. Yeah?
Some of your surrounding Chrome, since you're trying to answer that question about the visual, it seems like you could have done just the steps without any of the menus, without any of the cycles.
Okay, yeah. You mean like the header bar?
Yeah, and you, unless you're trying to demonstrate like there will be more here, which sometimes that's valuable.
Right. Yeah, so the question was, could we have just eliminated everything other than the steps right in the middle of the screen? That's a good point. So this actually is what our developer console looks like. These tools on the left are already real. So we took advantage of the fact that like all the information about these applications is already in the product and just built this right into it, kind of in a closed environment, obviously. And so that was kind of the approach there. But yeah, I think that for a prototype phase, if building it into another system or building other features on top of it or just using visual cues was something we didn't have to do, or it was going to add time, cut it, get rid of it, not necessary. But yeah, but in our case, this was kind of like the easiest way to get something out in the current existing product. Okay, so now you all had a lot of time to think about your product ideas. I'm going to ask for those volunteers. I really meant to ask this at the very beginning to prep you and say, be thinking about a product idea. But I know many of you, here we are, we're all developers, hackers. I'm sure there's somebody out there with a good idea. If not, I have one, but I want to hear from you.
I mean, does it have to be like a physical product or be like an app?
Yeah, it can be, yeah. So I think anything in terms of, anything product-like. It can be a physical product, app, software product. It can be a service for sure. Yeah, let's hear it.
All right, I'll do it.
All right, come on up. Let's hear your elevator pitch. Yeah! Matt. This is Matt, everybody. Good to meet you, Matt. Let's hear it.
All right, so I've had this idea for a while that we have a lot of visitors that come visit us from other states, and one of the things that they're constantly asking is like, what's the name of that mountain? And I'm just like, oh yeah, I should probably know that. And so I just have this vision of something where you just like point your phone at the mountains and it sort of geolocates and says like, that's Mount something.
Yeah, I like it.
It exists. That's the MVP of
Problem solved. Amazing. That's awesome. Love it.
I'm gonna go cry.
There we go. We can just start. We're done. Yeah. So actually, that's a good one. Let's go ahead and think about it anyway. Like we were going to create that. Like if that didn't exist, it's a great idea. I hope they're doing really well. What would a good prototype of that look like? Because that sounds awesome. But already, yeah, there's like so you gotta have an app that's got a camera functionality, right? You gotta be able to process images in some regard. You gotta have GPS location. You gotta have a database of sort of what these mountains look like from different angles, that kind of stuff. Maybe you could do that on an elevation map. All right. MVP sounds really hard to me already. Like, I'm just thinking about even slimming that down to a couple of those features is like, that's tough. It's really tough. I don't even know. But what were we getting at? What's the functionality that we could make appear real? It's not real. The functionality we're getting at is, I'm standing out in Colorado. I see a mountain. I don't know what mountain is. Cool. All right. How can we do that? Phone would be great. Let's just take it down a notch from a camera visual processor to sort of like, okay, what if we still sort of locate you, and then we kind of point your phone as a compass, because maybe those compass apps seem pretty simple, and then it kind of just tells you which mountains are in your vicinity. Maybe lists them as like, from highest to lowest to sort of help you pick it out, or maybe even tell you based on how far away you are that one of them's shorter. Okay. That's pretty good. That's almost still an MVP. Like you could ship that, right? What's an even slimmer version of that? Okay, the compass seems like relatively easy because there's a lot of compass apps out there. Well, let's get that out of there. Let's just say you just enter your city, and we just give you a generic list of the highest mountains you can probably see from a city you're in. That seems easier, right? So they can kind of get all the way down there. do we even need your location? Yeah, probably, I guess. But then do we need to have a list right off the bat? What if you just text us? We're just sitting there waiting for you, and you say, hey, I'm here, I'm in Boulder, I'm looking west, what do I see? And we're just ready to answer the phone. Okay. That's a little tougher. So we might go back to the other direction to be like, okay, that's going to be a lot of overhead, and it's not quite the experience we're looking for because there might be a lag. But let's go back one step to where there's no compass. But if you're in 3 cities in Colorado, or maybe just 1 city, and maybe we even just do it better where we do kind of like a couple different locations in a city. Give you kind of some hot spots to be in, and from there we tell you exactly like if you go left to right, you should see Mount. I go to the mountains a lot, obviously. And there we go. So anyway, I think that's the kind of thinking we could get to say, okay, there's value here. The value is in being able to show someone that functionality, make it appear real to them, and then how do we just reduce as much work out of that as possible to get that experience to someone. So we can't ship that to everybody in Colorado and say, when you show up in DIA, here you go, download our app. It's going to just tell you where you can see mountains from 2 places. But you can send that to, if you have friends who are visiting, you know where they're staying, you could custom build it for them. See how they experience that, see how they kind of process that experience, and learn from them that way. So that would be my suggestion there. So to recap, the whole sort of thinking here, right, is that if you take anything away, if you move on, I want you all to go and, as much as possible, avoid building bad MVPs. It's frustrating and bad for everyone involved. Don't get kind of brought down by bloating things up and adding more when you don't have to. Identify valuable prototypes that encapsulate real experiences without providing necessarily real functionality. And then reduce work as much as possible until you kind of realize that you've lost the value. Go back to where you can get that value and then start there. Okay, I think that's all I have for you. Thank you very much.